don't like school. Ever since I was a kid, I knew that I didn't like school, and that still hasn't changed. Math, science, I didn't want anything to do with that. All I wanted to do as a kid was watch Danny Phantom and play Pokemon Platinum. I didn't want to sit in a classroom and know how to spell my name or multiply by 12. How would I want to do that when I just got to Mount Coronet? My Monferno just evolved into an Infernape, bro. I gotta stop Cyrus from opening the portal to the Distortion World. I do have boring, legitimate reasons for not liking school though. Although wanting to play Pokemon Platinum is still a perfectly valid excuse. The first reason being the way that school completely ruins any enjoyment that you could get from reading. The way schools have you read books is like a frame perfect speedrun to how to make someone hate reading. You wanna know how to completely drain any enjoyment from a piece of media? You force someone to watch it and then tell them they can only go to a specific point every week and then make them answer stupid questions about it, like where did Johnny and Billy go when they went outside? How is any part of that supposed to be enjoyable? That's just torture at that point. Like imagine your friend puts on a movie and then every 15 minutes they pause it and look you dead in the eye to ask you some dumb shit like who did Johnny call after Billy stabbed him? It doesn't help that you always read the exact same boring ass books every year about slavery, black people, or segregation. I'm aware that racism is bad. We established that back in the 3rd grade. Can we please read a book about literally anything else for once? The worst experience I had reading a book in class was in 10th grade English 2 when we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird. For an entire 2 months, every class period consisted of nothing but one of the other kids reading the book out loud for a few pages, and then the teacher stopping us to pick someone else to read and asking us some random questions. I was sat in that dead silent classroom looking at the ceiling, listening to some kid read this book in the most monotone voice I have ever heard. And you know how kids in high school read out loud? They read like fucking Jimmy from South Park.
On the 4th day of Christmas.
Except when there was a sentence with the N-word in it. Oh man, the pure unadulterated passion and clarity that they would put into that hard R was really just something to behold, honestly. It got so bad that we all just agreed to start skipping pages because none of us wanted to read the book anymore. And when the teacher asked us, oh wait, are we really that far ahead? Everyone just lied and said yes. I have no idea how we did that. It wasn't as if we got together after class one day and all agreed upon it. Somebody just did it once and then nobody else snitched and everyone picked up what they were doing and then we just did it from then on there. Somehow these kids weren't capable of pronouncing 1st grade vocabulary, but they were all capable of just subconsciously agreeing to skip ahead and not snitch. And it's because of experiences like that that made me think I hated reading. School made it so fucking boring and unenjoyable, and they made it into an assignment instead of what it's supposed to be, a hobby. I remember I once read in my free time and finished 4 books in a month because I was actually interested in them and I didn't have to worry about doing it for a grade or going too far ahead and then spending every class period doing nothing while everyone else played catch up. Now, this is probably a controversial opinion, but maybe, just maybe, letting someone decide what they want to do and then allowing them the freedom to do it at their own pace and in their own time is an infinitely better way to maintain and build a lasting passion in something rather than forcing them to do it. When learning something new, people are very prone to frustration and giving up when they can't do it as well as they envision. And when they try their best to do something only for someone else to look at it and grade them based on how good or shit it is, only discouraging them even more. Let me put forth a scenario. If I'm in an art class and I'm really struggling with a painting and I'm looking around and I see that people are doing it better than me and also quicker, and then some miserable old fuck who refuses to quit for some reason comes along and then grades me on how good it is, I now have a number and scale to see just how much worse my painting is than someone else's. I'm gonna be much less proud of my painting and willing to do art long term as a hobby than if I just done it in my free time for the fun of it without any requirements to meet and nobody grading it. Especially since teachers never put anything positive when they grade. You ever notice that? They only point out where and when you fucked up, never acknowledge the good things or offer constructive criticism. You never get back an essay with a C that says, well, you repeated a few things, but your overall message was very thoughtful and insightful. It's always just, you misspelled this, I didn't understand this, or this is a garbage take and you should kill yourself. Humans really aren't that complicated. If they don't want to do something, they don't do it. And if you force them to do it anyway, you're gonna get a crappy half-baked effort compared to if they did it of their own free will. I don't know how schools and teachers still haven't figured that out and act shocked when a bunch of sleep-deprived teenagers don't care about a book they're being forced to read and just look up summaries online instead. I'm less likely to watch and really absorb a Vsauce video if it's assigned to me for a grade than I would have been if I was up at 3 AM unable to sleep for the 5th night that week. And I would have never learned or enjoyed video editing had I been forced to sit in a classroom while someone reads off a PowerPoint and then make exactly what the teacher wanted while being compared to 20 other people. And it really makes me sad to think of how many people either lost or will never realize their enjoyment for something because school or a teacher took a big stinky shit all over it. Because that number is most definitely higher than the number of kids who were interested in the subject material and then looked into it in their free time. I mean, think about it. Did school ever inspire you to go solve polynomials or research the water cycle in your free time? Of course it didn't. You most likely only learned the bare minimum of the topic to pass, immediately pushed it all out of your brain as soon as you got out of school. Because school isn't about retaining or applying information, it's about passing. Passing is what gets you the fuck out of there as soon as possible, and passing is what makes the school look good. It doesn't matter how well educated or prepared for the world these kids are. The more of them that pass, the better of a school we send to the county so we can get more money to spend on everything except paying our teachers the amount they fucking deserve. Just last year, 98% of our students graduated and we're an A+ school. Never mind the fact that our curriculum is from the 1920s and we don't at all care about our students as individuals, and as soon as they graduate we forget they ever existed. Come enroll at our school today. You'll love it because we said you would and everyone else does. At the high school I went to, if you failed a class, you want to know what you did? You were given the choice of retaking the class in person, which at minimum would take a whole 5-month half semester and at most a whole 10-month school year, or retaking it online at no penalty, and whatever grade you got in the online version will replace your actual grade. And you want to know what people chose to do? They chose the fucking online one. Because you can breeze through that shit in a week and cheat and get a perfect grade. A teacher told us one time about a student who never came to his class for the entire 5-month semester, and then the next semester he finished the class in 2 weeks online with an A. Which goes to further prove my point that school is entirely about passing and nothing else. If you fail, we literally provide you with the same class but on easy mode, which you cannot possibly fuck up because we need our graduation rate to stay high. Those kids who never went to class and retook all their classes online and cheated or portrayed as the bad kids because someone's worth as a human being is definitely determined by how well they perform in this outdated one-size-fits-all system. But when they walk across that stage, they're getting the exact same diploma as the kids who showed up every day and put in their all. So why the fuck should I bother putting in extra effort when you can achieve the exact same result more efficiently? School just forces a set curriculum and subjects onto you without taking into account what you as a person are good or bad at. You have to pass these classes, you're heavily pushed to go to college after you graduate, and you have to solve the math problem this specific way, otherwise it's wrong. God, they push college onto you so fucking hard. And it isn't for your own individual good, by the way. It's purely because it makes the school look good when a large number of their students go on to pursue higher education, and also because it's the bottom of the barrel when it comes to life advice. It's like telling a depressed person, oh, just exercise, it'll make you feel better. I remember at my school we had a thing called senior night, which is basically just the teachers sucking off all the 6.9 GPA kids who in turn also sucked off the teachers and always reminded them to collect the homework. And coincidentally, all the kids they talked about were going to big state schools and universities. They didn't mention little Derek from history class who didn't have a 4.8, who's going to go to trade school and become an electrician and make more money than any of them and be able to pay off his debt within 2 years of graduating, and then later on regret his decisions when he's 33 years old with arthritis. Or literally any of the other hundreds of students who weren't in that top 1%, despite them being a more accurate representation of the overall student body. Then in my junior year, we had to write fake admission letters to 3 colleges we wanted to go to. We had to explain why we wanted to go, how we were going to cover expenses, whether we're going to live on or off campus, all that boring shit, right? And when one kid asked, what if we aren't going to college? The teacher just said, you still have to do the assignment, otherwise you get a 0. Which bothers me so much because it pushes this idea of you have to go to college after high school, when some people just aren't in a position to do so at the time, or others just aren't ready for college yet and they want to be sure what they're going to pursue before investing tens of thousands of dollars into it. Or some people just don't want to go, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. There's nothing wrong with not having your life meticulously planned out at 18, and it's ridiculous that you're expected to, since it's an extremely stupid thing to live your life based off what you said for yourself at 18, as if people's entire lives and personalities don't change over time. Nobody had their life planned out at 18, and nobody's life at 18 looked the same as it does now. College isn't a be-all, end-all fucking solution. It's not as if you go to college and you're just automatically successful no matter what degree you choose. Maybe 30 years ago it was, when even after adjusting for inflation, everything costed a fraction of what it does currently and money was worth twice as much, but nowadays, college is oversaturated. You really think you're the only person in a student population of 15,000 who wants to set themselves apart from other students and get a good job? Not to mention that college admission letter is just a complete fucking joke. It isn't enough to get good grades, nor is it enough to do an extracurricular. You need to also volunteer at the homeless shelter, offer counseling to veterans with PTSD, and be God's gift to the earth, all while having lived the most difficult life imaginable, where you wake up every day in a cardboard box and break every bone in your body while living off 5 cents a month, which obviously isn't the case for a majority of teenagers, so you end up being forced to write this pretentious essay about how deeply your parents' divorce affected you as a child, and how the difficulties of living in a single parent house will tell you to be independent, while conveniently leaving out the fact that you don't even remember your parents getting divorced and they get along perfectly fine. Or an essay of how working a minimum wage job that violates at least 20 different labor laws every day and doesn't at all appreciate you as a human being taught you the value of hard work and discipline, even though you hate it and want to quit it every day you walk in because it's all about selling yourself, baby. It's a competition to see whose bones break the easiest and who donates the biggest portion of their yearly 5 cents to charity, and I'm telling you right now, I may come last everywhere else in life due to my status as a first-generation Afro-Hispanic, Asian, Pacific, Inuit, Arabian, Native American, but much like how I perform in bed, I'll be finishing first, only this time it'll be intentional. And while I did poke fun of them for asking the teacher to collect the homework, school turns those kids with high GPAs into these trophies and parades them around as if they're nothing more than some of their achievements. Look at this kid, he got good grades and played tennis. We don't really give a shit about his hobbies or his personal life, but boy does he make us look good for the district. I'm not trying to diminish their achievements, like if they worked their ass off because they wanted to, not because their parents made them, then hell yeah man, good for you. My problem is the way schools celebrate them as these gods among men, like they're not better than anyone else or a genius, they're just a fucking student, and when you parade them around as hey look, they're better than you, it only serves to subconsciously divide students up socially more than their hormones already do. And with some of those kids, it inflates their ego so much, and it creates these self-entitled pricks that think they get everything in life. What do you mean I can't get my oil changed for free? I read at a high school reading level in 5th grade, don't you know who I am? And going back to that point I mentioned about the math problem, again, in my junior year, I took an Algebra 2 honors class, which is really strict and fast-paced, and there was something we learned that was like, if this side of the triangle is this long, and this side is this long, how long is this side? Which by itself is already fucking hilarious, because that's such a comically specific scenario that you will never find yourself in. But I did find an easier way to get the answer, right? Well, I did that easier way on a test, and the question was marked wrong, because the teacher had to grade us based on how well we met the curriculum. Now, to be fair, she did say that it was stupid and she didn't agree with it, but the fact that the school made her do that is horseshit. I mean, the fact that you get graded on an objective, fixed scale in a creative writing class, or an English class, and when you're talking about what something personally symbolizes to you and you can be marked wrong, is a clear sign that the system is fucked. Not all of my classes were that strict, but they still had that era of you have to do it this way or it's wrong. Like whenever you get a word requirement for an essay or a rubric for a project. Oh my fucking god, rubrics. I hate them so much. How are you gonna tell me to make my own unique project, but then set 20 specific criteria that it has to meet for me to get a good grade? At that point, it isn't a genuine creation anymore. It's just all the bare minimum requirements for a good grade pasted together. And then afterwards, the teachers have the audacity to say none of the projects have any originality to them. Like, what did you expect? You gave me a task along with a list of all the specified things you wanted included it, and you made it clear that if I didn't do it that way, then it was bad. And yet somehow, even after doing all of that, it still isn't good enough. Like, what do you want? Word requirements on essays. If I can make my point in 5 words, why do I have to write an additional 40,000 of complete garbage? Not everything in life requires an in-depth answer. Let me give you an example. If I ask you the question, do you like ice cream? You say yes or no, and we move on with our lives. You convey to me your emotion on ice cream in 1 word, and I know everything I need to know, right? Now, if I say, write 5 paragraphs about why you do or don't like ice cream, and unless you're really passionate about ice cream, or you sit in the shower for 40 minutes every day rehearsing for this exact moment, you're forced to come up with a bunch of random-ass filler to talk about to meet that 5-paragraph requirement, when your point could have been made in a single word. And I remember in elementary school, they'd make us write our entire essay on a different piece of paper. Who the fuck writes out a whole ass essay and then goes, okay, now I need to change a few things, and then rewrites the whole thing from scratch, especially in a situation where you're under a forced time limit. And on top of that, we used to do these stupid fucking bubble maps to plan out our essays, and guess what? If we didn't do either of them, it counted against us, since we didn't follow the correct steps for writing an essay. Something similar is how art classes are required to do a bunch of sketches for your work for a grade before your final piece, and waste a bunch of class periods waiting for everyone to catch up. I'm not an artist, okay? I have no interest in being an artist. My portrait, utilizing a foreground, a midground, and a background, isn't gonna look any less shit the 9th time I draw it. So why can't I just draw it once and leave it at that? Going back to writing though, my least favorite thing was the way they would force you to write essays in that specific format in a limited time frame about this specific topic you don't care about. Let me give you my sad and my flashback about writing. As a kid, I hated writing. I absolutely fucking detested it more than anything else in the world. I don't know why, but as a kid when we were first learning how to structure an essay and write one, it didn't click with me. And I would always do anything in my power to stall for as long as possible because I didn't want to do it. And for the longest time, I genuinely thought something was wrong with me because I just couldn't do it. And what really did it was in 5th grade, where my damn ass shit ass teacher called me up to his desk with his hand on his mouth and he says, "What is this?" And then he proceeds to shit all over my essay. You didn't indent every paragraph, you forgot a comma here, you didn't use transition words, you didn't use your planning sheet, all this dumb bullshit that does not at all matter. Then he pulls out the smart girls paper and he looks me in my little 10-year-old soul and he says, "Why don't you write like this?" And when I tell him, because I don't write like that, he goes, "Well, maybe you should." The nerve. Nay, the audacity, Nay, the impertinence of this bitch to say all of this to a child. It was right then and there that I was convinced my stupid little poopy 10-year-old self would never write again. But then, a year later in 6th grade, for the first week of school, we had an assignment, which was to just write about a book we liked. It could be as long as we wanted, or as short as we wanted, and it was just graded for completion, right? And it was then that I realized I didn't actually hate writing. I was just forced to write about stuff I didn't care about, and I dealt with adults on power trips who put me down for not doing it right. Believe it or not, applying an outdated one-size-fits-all learning strategy for something as uniquely personal as writing doesn't always work, and not everyone is able to write in the same way. Ask me why I think school is cringe instead of should college athletes get paid, and I'll write you a 4,000-word Google Doc, which goes against every writing convention I learned in school and isn't spell-checked purely out of spite, and even make a really bad YouTube video that 2 people will watch. Writing gets especially obnoxious when you get into the world of typed essays nowadays, where you need to spell check everything and use this font and use at least 10 different sources, all of which have at least 2, but preferably 4 other sources attached to verify them. Like, who fucking cares? Just let me write. Stop assigning these arbitrary requirements to it and let me say what I want, how I want. This next one has got to be the dumbest one on this list, because it happens entirely subconsciously, and as much as kids may pretend that they are, nobody's in control of it. It isn't as if every kid gets together before the first day of school and agrees, okay, let's create this specific kind of social environment for the rest of the school year. Because the sad majority of people in school and just life in general are so fucking shallow. And since you're stuck with them for 40 hours a week, you slowly get the impression that, oh, that's just how the world is. Let me give you an example. In my math class, my freshman year, I transferred into my class about 2 months into the school year and nobody talked to me, which I was fine with because honestly, I didn't want to be friends with anybody there, and I kind of just wanted to go in, do my work, and then get the fuck out as soon as possible. But then another girl transferred in 5 months later who looked like she was 24, and like a fucking Disney movie, at the end of class, literally everybody in the class besides me was standing up and talking to her, and I was the only person in my seat. And at the time, I was pissed off, and I have no idea why. Maybe it was because I was 14, but it really bothered me, and I thought, man, fuck people. They're so shallow. But then I graduated, and I realized that along with everything else in high school, none of that matters. I know you hear that a lot, and it's hard to believe it while you're actually in school because your entire life revolves around school for 40 hours a week. And when you're going through high school, everything is like always 10 times more dramatic than it actually is, but you really don't fully understand it until you graduate. All those projects you did, that time you shockingly got rejected by that girl who never went out of her way to speak to you, the social hierarchy, none of it, not a single goddamn thing mattered. I actually realized that a long time before graduation, because halfway through my junior year, the funniest shit I've ever seen happen. But legitimately though, I wish I had that realization sooner, because it's extremely easy to fall prey into the stereotypes you see in movies made by 40-year-old freshmen and believe in different cliques or social groups like the nerds and jocks. But life isn't a fucking Disney sitcom, and even if it was, you definitely are not the shy, nerdy, but also extremely hot supermodel of a female main character. Regardless of what they do or look like, people are just people, not caricatures, and there's nothing stopping you from talking to whoever you want. School is literally the best time of your life to make friends, since you'll never be surrounded by that many people your own age again for the rest of your life, which is something that I wish someone had told me sooner, but it's also unfortunately a time when people are the most judgmental and unsure of themselves. Popularity and social circles are only as real as you believe them to be, and if someone seems interesting and you want to talk to them, no matter what they look like or what quote-unquote group they belong to, go ahead and talk to them. And if they don't want to be your friend, man, fuck them, who cares, go talk to someone else. I can say that with confidence because there were plenty of people who I'd never speak to or only occasionally saw in the hall and heard about from other people, and in my head I built up this stereotypical caricature or idea of them just purely based off their looks and what I'd hear about them, which, you know, bit of an incendiary take. Don't do that. But then through some random set of events, I'd end up being forced to talk to them one-on-one and realize that they were nothing like what I imagined them to be and were completely normal. Wait, hold on a minute. You're telling me that just because this girl is pretty doesn't immediately mean she's a bitch? People's looks and personalities can be mutually exclusive, and actually I'm the asshole for thinking they aren't and judging someone based off only their appearance without ever actually talking to them? Well shit man, why didn't anyone ever tell me? The opposite is also true. I'm sure I'm not alone in having met someone who you thought was cool, and then within 2 weeks realizing that they based their entire personality off Nagato Komaeda from Danganronpa, and the reason why they always wear a green jacket every day and talk about hope and despair and how lucky they are suddenly clicks after you read the first volume of Danganronpa with Komaeda in it, and you realize, Oh, you're actually crazy. That's a universal experience, right? That's happened to everyone, right? But yeah, there are some weirdos in school who do act like Disney caricatures, but that's surprisingly less common than you think, I promise you. And most of the time, you can just ignore them. So yeah, to end this point on social hierarchy, go talk to whoever you want. Just don't be obnoxious or know when to take a hint, because the one thing everyone hates is that one kid who constantly follows you around and always asks you to be their friend. And don't ever feel the need to mold yourself into the perfect person to be friends with someone. If someone doesn't appreciate you for who you are naturally, then why the fuck would you want them around you? If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best, because realistically, they're not that far apart. After graduation, the only thing you really have to show for your time in high school is the people you met. That is a much more accurate representation of what you did than a piece of paper you're gonna end up losing. Nobody fucking remembers every single class period they sat in. They remember... God, that sounds like an anime episode. They remember all the times they hung out with their friends or did dumb shit in class, right? One of the biggest reasons I never tried harder in school was because it never felt like I was learning some sort of skill or anything that'd benefit me in the long term. Everything I learned could only be applied inside of a classroom, and it was all memory based. It never involved any critical thinking or real world application, just, alright, here's a test, regurgitate the info, here's another test, regurgitate, and then you graduate and get the fuck out of my school. There is an entire universe of difference between memorizing things about a subject and genuinely understanding them and being able to apply them, which school just somehow fails to recognize. I don't know what a noun is. I don't know what a verb is. So by school's definition, I would have failed English because I don't have the different parts of speech memorized, even though I can perfectly communicate my thoughts to you and express myself, because someone's ability to perform in a certain discipline is always 100% of the time directly related to how much they've memorized about it, right? It isn't about knowing how to fix a car. It's about knowing the different parts of a car, right? That's what makes you a good mechanic. The core curriculum you spend 12 years in by default should provide you with some practical application of what you learned, right? 12 years is a long fucking time to do something only to have no practical knowledge to show for it. Which perfectly transitioned into my next point. This is the most commonly talked about one, everyone knows it, yet nobody feels the need to do anything to change it, which is the fact that school teaches you the most useless shit possible. And let me just make something entirely clear. Even if school did teach how to budget or do taxes, no, I probably wouldn't pay attention. And I didn't, because the one class that involved #adulting things I had to take was a mandatory economics class that taught us about credit scores and buying houses, except that was in the very last semester of my senior year, which is the last 5 months you're in high school. And who the fuck is still paying attention to anything they learn at that point? Bruh, my senior year was entirely online and I only had 5 classes, and even then, I already had the credits for 2 of them, so I really only had 3. I was clocked the fuck out. But as I'm laying in bed, staring at the ceiling currently, I'd love nothing more than in good conscience to tell you to pay more attention in school, but I can't. I'm also not sure why that's always the argument people default to. We don't teach you life lessons because you wouldn't pay attention anyway. Like as if sleep-deprived teenagers not paying attention to something when they're being forced to learn it in the exact same boring way as everything else is a justified excuse to teach the next generation of adults complete nonsense and waste their time for 4 years. The teachers are aware of it, the students are aware of it, the parents are aware of it, the administration is probably aware of it, although they're too busy trying to find ways to cut teachers' budget even more. But nobody wants to do anything about it. Honestly, I don't even know why school exists at this point. We live in a time where everyone walks around with supercomputers in their pocket and you can literally learn anything you want for free on the internet in seconds. Yet we're still forcing kids to sit in a classroom for 40 hours a week to learn about linear programming and talk about what a fucking white fence symbolizes in a book from 1930. The school system refuses to acknowledge any sort of technology and puts up the excuse that, oh, you should be able to do stuff without it. It isn't as if you're always gonna have a calculator in your pocket, right? That's never gonna happen. And in reality, they just can't be bothered to think of a logistical and practical way to integrate technology into education because they know that it's a vastly superior learning alternative than teaching and don't want to admit that they've already effectively been replaced. I mean, if you want proof that school is behind on technology, take into consideration that teachers never know how to turn on the fucking projector or their personal work computer, despite them using the same model of both every year for the last 2 decades. There is a most likely broken rectangle in your pocket at all times which you can use to learn whatever you want, and you aren't limited to the knowledge of a single person. You're drawing from thousands upon thousands of different sources of information. As long as you know where to look, you can find out all of the material that'll be covered in a college class just by going online, and then go out and learn that in your free time for free. There's literally videos and posts from people flat out saying, hey, I go here, I take this class, and these are the books we read in class. Now, I'm not saying that technology should always replace traditional education. I mean, after all, who the fuck wants to go under for surgery and then hear the doctor say, don't worry man, I saw this in a YouTube video 5 minutes ago. But my point still stands. Schools also refuse to acknowledge that everyone is good at different things and allow them to freely pursue what they're interested in, despite the fact that that's literally the only reason why the world is able to function. The world doesn't poorly function because there's one person who's good at everything. It barely functions because there's a bunch of different individual people doing things to make it all work. Now, obviously, everyone needs a basic level of understanding in certain subjects, but after a certain point, you should be able to pick and choose what classes interest you instead of being forced to take the usual math, English, science, and history. If you're gonna absolutely force these disciplines on people, at least have the basic human decency to respect them and not dilute all of them to just memorization. History is literally the most important subject in school, but nobody fucking cares when you make it nothing more than memorizing names and dates rather than looking into the reasons and deeper meanings behind the events being discussed. It isn't about why something happened, it's about what happened and when did it happen. Even in college, which is always built up to finally be this completely free and customizable version of education you can use to really hone in and study whatever specific thing you want whenever you want to, still forces you to take a set list of core classes to graduate, regardless of your major. If someone is enrolling in the computer engineering program to get a computer engineering degree from a school which prides itself on its computer engineering program, and the only reason this person is here is to be a computer engineer, and they're dead set on only doing computer engineering, why the fuck would you force them to take a bunch of different classes completely unrelated to that instead of allowing them to go all in on computer engineering? Not everyone needs to be a jack of all trades. Some people are just really good at one thing, and if they're completely sure of themselves, you're only hindering them by taking away their attention from what they're good at and force them to split it between all these different things. College classes also force you to do your own learning outside of class with how little of a fuck they give about you. And you gotta wonder, if I'm just gonna be teaching this stuff to myself using free resources that I already had, what am I paying for? Everything is 10 times more expensive and of lower quality than it would be in other countries. Why is it that when it comes to everything except improving student quality of life, universities seemingly have unlimited money? They can somehow afford to drop $70 million on building a football stadium, but why is no money ever spent towards providing students with basic human rights like, I don't know, free food, or rooms that aren't just glorified closets? But wait, I know why. It's because they don't care about you beyond the money you give them. That's why some colleges will force you to live on campus and dress it up as enriching student life, while also charging you $8,000 for it. Because at the age of 18, society does not trust you to buy alcohol or drive a car responsibly, and 2 months ago, you still had to ask to use the bathroom, but we do allow you to gamble in 39 states and pay $8,000 for a glorified prison cell. And look, I know the teachers have it rough, I really do. I don't want this to just be purely from a student perspective, because the education system sucks for everyone, except the people behind the scenes that are profiting from everything happening. As a teacher, you gotta give the exact same lecture multiple times a day to a bunch of teenagers who don't want to be there. You have administration that doesn't care beyond graduation rates, and you have to deal with these angry parents who think that their dumbass kid can't do anything wrong. And on top of all of that, you're basically also a free social worker, and you take your work home with you, having to plan lessons or grade papers. And all of that for an insulting amount of pay. I know I couldn't do that. Imagine having to sit in front of 20 to 30 people with barely any interaction and talk about something none of them are interested in for 55 minutes, 7 times a day, 5 days a week. Even if it's something that you're interested in, you're not teaching what you want to teach. You're teaching what the school tells you to teach. No matter how passionate you are about something, that would wear anybody down. However, I will say that some teachers are absolute garbage. My chemistry teacher in high school would literally just give us a worksheet at the beginning of class on whatever subject we were learning, and then sit on the computer and then browse sports news on Twitter for the rest of the class, with the projector on, by the way, so we could see too. And the only time we ever did anything even vaguely chemistry related, coincidentally, was the same day that he was being observed by an administrator. He wasn't a dick or anything, he was pretty chill, but at the same time, literally anyone with a basic understanding of chemistry could have done his job, and he put forth the bare minimum effort. And the only times he'd ever actually get up in front of the class and teach us was when he just casually dropped new material on us and didn't bother explaining it. If nobody had asked, there is not a doubt in my mind that that man would have spent the entire school year on his ass as a computer. I had a math teacher who, instead of teaching himself, would instead put on a video of a woman going through our textbook and solving the problem, and then if anyone had questions, he'd go over it with them. And there are way way too many teachers who would literally just read off a PowerPoint and then occasionally stop and say, write this down until going on to the next slide. Some of which still persist even in college, and it's like, wow, I'm getting the same quality of teaching as I got in high school, except now it's 10,000 times the price. Anyway though, those are my big general thoughts, although I do have a lot of small honorable mentions when it comes to complaints and random stories. I'll just quickly go through while something random plays over top of it. Alright, first up, we got math tests that just say solve in the directions. No hints like find the value of x, literally just solve. Next up, we got whenever you ask a teacher for help and they just say, try your best, or what do you think it means? Like, look man, I get what you're doing, I really do. You're trying to get me to form my own answer because in a world of modern technology, I never have to think about anything anymore. But miss, I'm gonna keep it real with you. I don't even know how to do this incorrectly. My head is nothing but TV static right now. Then we got whenever teachers put on a video in class and then give you a worksheet that was to fill in the blank with lines from the video. How is that teaching? Because at that point, like I mentioned earlier, you're not paying attention to anything else in the video. You're just listening for when they say the line you're looking for so you can fill in the blank on your worksheets. And then every single time after the video is done, there's always that one dumbass kid who's like, can you go back? I need number 5. Or yeah, I only missed numbers 3, 6, 9, 15, 17, 23, 25, 20. Then there is the standardized testing days where it'll be 4 hours, and after you finish, you aren't allowed to do anything but sleep. It's so annoying. You have my test, there's no cell service in here. Why am I not allowed to do homework for another class or even read a book? How is reading a book considered a distraction in a testing environment when every 5 seconds there's a teacher walking around peering over students' shoulders? And last but not least, to prove that school really is bullshit, I once completely guessed on a psychology test, and you want to know what happened? I got the highest grade in the class. That is not something that should fucking happen. You should not be able to guess your way to a good grade. Anyway though, I hope you enjoyed, and always remember, the bell doesn't dismiss you, I do.
Bring your best friend to your Ivy League university. Today I failed an exam at my Ivy League university. If you don't know which Ivy League I go to, just look at this girl's outfit, and also gave her a Cornell engineering pen so she could fit right in. Made Allie sit in the front just like a true Ivy League student. Anyway, after her first Ivy League